Fear. It's something we all deal with, right? But what if I told you there's a force out there that's even more powerful? That's what we're diving into today. We're going to explore this incredible idea, a concept called perfect love that doesn't just help you manage fear, but can actually, drive it right out.
Okay, so let's make this personal right from the get-go. I want you to take just a second and really think about it. What are the fears that are holding you back in your life? You know, the big ones, the small ones? What are those anxieties that kind of shape your decisions or maybe keep you up at night? Just hold on to those for a bit as we unpack this together.
All right, so first up, let's really get a handle on the problem. We're not just talking about fear as, a fleeting emotion. The idea here is to see it as a potential tyrant, a force that can have a serious grip on how we live our day-to-day lives.
And this really puts the core conflict in black and white, doesn't it? The thinking is that fear and love are just fundamentally at odds. They're like two opposing forces. And if your life is totally dominated by fear, well, there just isn't much room left for a life that's guided by love.
And look, this isn't some abstract philosophical thing. We're talking about the real, nitty-gritty fears that can tyrannize us every single day. Things like the fear of punishment or being judged, fear of rejection or of failure. We worry about our health, our money. Do any of these sound familiar? Maybe they line up with what you were just thinking about a moment ago.
So, okay, if fear is the problem, what's the solution, right? This next part is where we introduce the big idea, the central thesis of this whole explainer, this concept of a love that is so powerful it can actually conquer fear.
Now, it's really important we get what perfect love means in this context. We're not talking about romance or some kind of flawless affection. It's described more as this mature, abiding love. It's a state of being where you're resting in a benevolent, loving presence. And that deep sense of security just naturally reflects outward in how you treat other people. And here it is. This is the big one. The central idea this whole thing is built on. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. I mean, the claim is so simple, but it's incredibly profound, isn't it? The idea is, where this mature, abiding love is present, fear just can't stick around. It gets pushed right out. Okay, so let's see how this actually works. We're going to look at this principle in action through an ancient story from the Gospel of Mark. Now, it's an old story, but believe me, the problem it illustrates is absolutely timeless. So I want you to just picture this scene for a second. The disciples are out on a lake, in a boat, and they get caught in this just violent storm. They're totally overwhelmed, getting battered by the wind and the waves, and they're just fighting for their lives to stay afloat. It's such a perfect metaphor for those moments in our own lives when everything feels chaotic and completely out of our control, right? And then, right in the middle of all this chaos, something extraordinary happens. A figure appears, just walking on the stormy water, and it's coming right towards their boat. Now, you'd think this would be a moment of hope, but that's not how they see it at all.
And this is a perfect illustration of how fear just messes with our heads. They are so consumed by their terror of the storm that they can't even recognize the very presence that's coming to save them. Fear literally blinds them. They mistake their rescuer for a ghost and start crying out in even more terror. It's wild.
And this is the turning point. The figure, Jesus, speaks directly to their fear. He doesn't just calm the storm yet. First, he calms them. He tells them, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid."
Okay, so this next part is where it gets really interesting, because it digs into why they were so afraid in the first place. You see, the wind dies down, Jesus gets in the boat, but the story says they were still just completely blown away, astounded. There's a much deeper issue going on here.
And that brings us to the big question, right? The immediate danger is gone. The storm is past. But they're still completely bewildered. Why? What is it that they are just not getting?
And here's where we find the real insight. See, just before this whole storm incident, they had witnessed the miracle of the loaves, where a massive crowd was fed from almost nothing. So they saw this incredible, generous power at work for other people. But when the storm hit them personally, when the crisis was in their own boat, they completely failed to connect the dots. It's like they could admire this benevolent power from a distance, but they just couldn't trust it for themselves, up close and personal.
So their fear, it wasn't just a natural reaction to a bad storm. The source text suggests it actually came from a deeper failure, what it calls a hardening of the heart. And why? Because they couldn't apply the lesson of abundant, loving power they had just seen to their own present danger.
All right, so how do we take this ancient insight and actually apply it to the storms in our own lives? How do we keep our own hearts from getting hardened when fear starts to creep in?
Well, the source material actually suggests a really practical path forward. First step, name your fears. Don't just let them swirl around as vague anxieties. Consciously identify what they're about. Is it your health, your job, a relationship? Step 2, intentionally bring those specific fears under the umbrella of this principle. Perfect love casts out fear. And then, step 3, reflect that love outward. When you see fear in other people, meet them with a patient, non-judgmental presence instead of adding to it.
And what's the outcome of actually doing this? Well, the idea is that by consciously going through these steps, we're basically inviting that calming, benevolent presence right into our own boat, smack dab in the middle of our personal storm. And according to this text, that is when the winds in our own lives can finally begin to quiet down.
So, we'll end with this question for you to think about. Just like those disciples in the boat, what source of help or love or calm might already be right there in your life? Who or what is that figure standing on the waves that maybe, just maybe, your own fear is preventing you from seeing?